Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching episode 22 of the Mobility Talks. A warm welcome to all of you as we'll be looking into a topic that is sometimes overlooked in the context of urban planning, urban mobility, and the management of public space, and that is city logistics. And it's all the more relevant to be discussing logistics now as we enter into the Christmas season and Santa is coming to town. It's lovely, as usual, to see so many of you again for our last episode of the year. We have received over 80 registrations for today's talk, with attendees joining from 27 different countries, including our usual Spain, Germany, Belgium, but we also have people coming from around the world. It's always really great to have this international audience by our side. There's also an interesting representation between different types of organizations with interest from public authorities especially. Could it be that cities are increasingly concerned by the surge of e-commerce and the pressure of logistics on public space? Well, we'll find out. And as usual, with our mobility talks, we strongly encourage interaction amongst yourselves and with the speakers. You can discover who else is online by clicking on the attendees tab, and you can raise your comments and questions in the chat and the questions tab as well. I'll be monitoring all of this and raising your questions with speakers throughout the discussion. And we also have an open poll on Slido, for which we can also put a link in the chat, and you can answer the question. What do you see as the most disruptive trend in city logistics in the next 5 years? You'll have to pick one out of 5 options that we suggest: autonomous logistics, increasing urbanization, booming e-commerce, regulatory requirements on the urban environment, or digitalization of logistics. Take your pick, and we'll be asking our speakers also to position themselves on the question later. Santa, there you are. Thanks for popping by. How are the preparations coming along? You have less than 2 weeks, my friend. Is everything almost ready? Yeah, okay, I'll take that as a yes. From your long history of mastering the art of mass delivery on time, how do you view current innovations in the logistics sector? Yeah, okay. You don't seem so impressed. Then again, you seem to have quite the competitive advantage despite your rudimentary animal-powered urban air mobility vehicle. You've probably been following developments in cities that are trying to cut down on emissions and reclaiming public space from vehicles. Do you worry about finding an appropriate parking spot for your reindeers? Okay. Yeah, well, you only need rooftops, so fair enough. But then what about delivery routes? Surely you've seen quite some progress on digitalization. Is that something you've been using? No. Okay, I knew it. How do you even design your route, actually? Proprietary information that you don't want to share. Okay, well, you're more than welcome to stay. We'll be discussing how to make your life easier, even if you don't seem too bothered. On the off chance that we can't rely solely on you this year, we'd better make sure that the logistics sector is on the ball. Otherwise, there will be a lot of unhappy kids out there. So, goodbye, Santa. Okay, so to discuss this, we'll be together for the next 90 minutes. We'll start with a series of short presentations from each of our panelists, and then we'll be engaging in an open conversation in which I strongly encourage you to get involved. So, if you're ready, I'd like to invite Payal Pandya to the stage. Payal is project manager for smart cities at Dublin City Council, and she's been working on several projects related to city logistics. Payal, welcome, and the floor is yours. And a quick unmute, Payal.
But hi everyone, my name is Payal Pandya and I work with the Smart Cities unit in Dublin City Council. And today I'm going to talk about the innovation in the city logistics more from the kind of a public authority, local government perspective. Um, Let me go to the next slide. So the project that I'm involved in, I'm leading a project called Senator, which is a Horizon 2020 research and development project. It is EU funded, and what we are trying to do is test out different solutions that we could use to optimize the last mile deliveries in the urban areas. Within this project, we have like 11 partners that are spread across 5 countries, and we are testing the solution in 2 urban living labs. The timeline that we are looking into is 48 months, that is 4 years. It's a Horizon 2020 project, so it started in 2020. It was supposed to end in 2024, but we are kind of extending it, so it is kind of like 4.5 years long project. And I think even though we are saying that there are 11 partners within the project, we are dealing with a lot of stakeholders from the city itself. We are operating, or we are testing the solutions related to logistics in 2 cities, that is Dublin, Ireland, and Zaragoza in Spain. And the solutions that we are developing in these 2 cities are very different. So I'll just talk about Dublin for now. In Dublin, we made sure that we should be connecting with the relevant stakeholders all the time. So we came in contact with the delivery companies, with the businesses, with different teams in the city council itself, because transportation is a wide subject and there are a lot of people involved in it. And unless we don't really talk to them, we wouldn't know what kind of solutions there are, what kind of problems there are, and how can we really coordinate bits and pieces between them. When we talk about logistics for now, and these are the solutions that we are really looking into. As I said, this is an R&D project, so we are really just testing the solutions as of now. And what the existing model of, well, most of the delivery and logistic companies is, as you would already know, that there would be like a warehouse or a distribution center, and from there a vehicle would come to your place and do the delivery at your doorstep. What we are trying to do with this project is to see if we could introduce small elements or small points, stops between in that delivery route. So it could be an urban consolidation center, which is usually outside the urban periphery, or it could be a micro consolidation center, which is inside the urban periphery, and then there could be like a pickup point or a parcel locker that we say. So it is mostly to again break up the delivery pathway there is, and to see if we could optimize the deliveries within the logistics sector, and see if it is possible for us to make it more sustainable and bring lesser delivery vehicles on the road itself. Just to define the jargons that I've just used in terms of the urban consolidation center or micro consolidation centers. When we say urban consolidation centers, we are talking about a logistic hub, which, as I said, is outside the urban periphery, but where different delivery companies could bring up their parcels, get it accumulated in the consolidation center, and from there, there is just one vehicle going outside of the UCC and delivering the parcels from different companies. So, just to give you an example, if in my house, for example, there is a parcel to come from DHL, a parcel from Amazon, a parcel from DPD, there are 3 vehicles coming to my house at 3 different timings. What we are trying to see is it possible for us to consolidate it, and there are 3 different parcels coming through one vehicle at my place. A micro consolidation center has a similar concept, but it could be independently by one delivery company or by multiple. It depends on how the operational model would be, but there is a modal change there. And from a van, possibly a delivery cargo bike or a e-bike or a trike would go out and make the deliveries, and the parcel lockers is where you pick up your parcels from. I think the most important question that we want to ask ourselves is that why are we doing this, and would it be worth it? And I think that's the whole point of testing the solutions in any of the city. So we looked from different lenses, from the delivery company side or the businesses lenses, or for the public authorities or for the citizens, and we realized that the benefits could be for all of them. The cities, thus Dublin city specifically, I would say the streets are kind of narrow, so the space cannot be extended in any way. The streets are designed like they're 100 years old. So how do we make space for everything that there is? So be it the active travel, be it the delivery companies, be it the pedestrian, the cyclist, the buses, the shared taxi, the private cars, and so on. So how do we make space for it? And I think that's where the management really comes into picture, the city management, the logistic management. And when we talk about the delivery companies, they are the lifeline of any city. So it is really important for us to bring it into the focus and work accordingly and make plans and introduce some interventions to make it more efficient and more sustainable. And it works out for everyone. For public authority, we have more sustainable, greener cities. For the citizens, we have a better environment. And for the logistic companies, possibly we would have efficient deliveries, thus creating like a smart and sustainable city in itself. And I think I'll stop here. That's kind of a gist of what I've been really working on, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Brilliant, thank you, Payal. And it's important to start here in the city or in a city, because at the end of the day, this is the space within which all delivery and logistics companies are operating. They're obviously operating also in between cities, but at the end of the day, they're going deep into cities, and this interaction with you is really important. And maybe I was a bit unfair in the introduction to say that maybe cities haven't been so active on this issue. I mean, you clearly have been, but we'll discuss that in the panel as well. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you, Payal. Next up then is Christian Nordling. He is the Director for Health, Safety, Security and the Environment at PostNord Denmark. Christian, can you tell us what is your vision for innovation in city logistics?
Yes. First of all, I should have some slides that are coming up here. First of all, I will give you just a very short introduction about what is, and of course this is always teasing. I'll give you a quick overview about what is PostNord, just to give you a perspective of this. PostNord is a postal company that was basically the old postal companies in Denmark and Sweden, and Sweden and Denmark choose to join. So we are a state-owned company, but also have parcel deliveries and e-commerce deliveries in Norway and Finland, and have an injection point of import-export through Germany, and a business with e-commerce in a company we call Direct Link, that basically join us to platforms like Alibaba to provide e-commerce into the Nordic of Scandinavia. First of all, our strategy in PostNord and our sustainable agenda is that we want to manifest the climate leadership to be the postal company in front in the Nordics, and also providing these e-commerce services. So our strategy is to be fossil free by 2030, and then we have some targets on that road. 40% CO2 reduction by 25. That is the first target we're getting closer on, and expect to also to be able to reach. And then we have zero emission in last mile no later than 2027, and this is about electrifying our fleet in our last mile deliveries all over Scandinavia. Then we have, as part of our strategy, that we care for our people. We have a zero vision for safety when it comes to occupational health, that we don't want injuries in between our employees or anybody who works in our company. And also on fair terms, responsible procurement, that everything we do with subcontractors and everybody who works with us is that they need to be treated as same as we treat our own staff. And then the last one is that we want to unleash the power of diversity, that we see that our companies should reflect the rest of the working market that we are in. Then I will dig down to what we are working with. A few years ago, we decided across all the Nordic countries, and as you mentioned just before, I'm presenting the Danish company, so I will speak both out from the company strategy, but also on my own beliefs in the discussion today. We have 6 key areas across in PostNord that we are focusing on in a structured program where all countries joined. So we try to create standards that we implement across the Nordic countries. The first one is to optimize capacity, and that means that have the terminals to optimize everything we can within our our terminals, our processes, our products, to do it the most efficient way. And then there is an EU agenda and also an agenda that we have joined into. This is mostly for Sweden and Norway because they have the longest distance. But that is actually to transport as much as we can by rail, and try to move as much as possible, not to be in airplanes, but by road or rail when possible. And then we have tested a lot of differences within biofuels when it comes to heavy trucks, and looking into the technology and following this quite closely. And what we experience is that the technology is actually moving really, really fast. So our task about how quickly could we actually electrify the heavy trucks, I expect, and this is from my personal mind, that this will go much quicker than we actually expect already, and we will also see that in the cities coming to deliveries. Then we have green electricity and energy efficiency is building. We decided, and that's actually quite a few years back in 2009, to buy all green electricity that we have that supplies all our buildings and charging infrastructure for electrical vehicles, etc. And is still focusing on that, but also focusing on how can we actually also reduce the amount of electricity at the same time to make it most efficient. Then we have fuel efficiency, and that also comes by driving behavior, education for our drivers, and of course looking into the vehicles that we are buying, that they are the most efficient that we have on the roads, and that we don't send a big truck out to pick up one case, but we also choose to send the correct vehicle for the correct task. And then accelerate the electrification of our fleet. In Denmark, we have 220 electrical vehicles, and I think all over we will shortly reach around 1,000 vehicles driving electrical in the Nordics for last mile deliveries. And then when it comes to the city logistics, it is my expectations, like Payal said, that there will be a lot of these things that will come as demands of the cities and that we can discuss today. So looking forward to it, and thanks that I could join. You have to unmute.
Nice one. Thank you. Yeah, on your side, it's really about fleet management, and at the same time, you have these very ambitious sustainability objectives. And yeah, it'll be interesting to understand how do you manage the fleet so that it's flexible, agile, able to go into all sorts of areas and connect dots. I mean, I guess that's a job in itself. So thanks, Christian, and yeah, we'll be discussing that in the panel. Okay, so next up is Lucy Mascarinas. She is a sustainable mobility expert with Sam Schwartz, and she will be bringing her perspective on urban air mobility, even if it's very likely not powered by reindeer, Lucy. So yeah, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Jean-Paul. So as you can see from my slide here, I have taken Santa's coming to town very seriously. And the reason I did put this slide up is because for many people, the thought of deliveries by drone is something that's almost magical. It's not necessarily something that people think is happening now or even in the next few years. But I'm here to tell you that actually that's not the case. A recent McKinsey study reported that in early 2022, each day 2,000 deliveries were being made by drone worldwide. And this is expected to grow rapidly in the coming few years. Delivery by drone is part of the wider topic of urban air mobility. So what is urban air mobility? Well, it's often referred to as the third dimension of mobility and is commonly defined as the integration of drones in the urban space. There are two key types of drone delivery vehicles. We have passenger electrically vertically take off and land vehicles. They transport a small number of people over short distances but can also carry payloads. Currently they can be piloted by a human on board, but they later down the line could potentially be remotely piloted or even completely autonomously piloted. And then there's the smaller delivery drones, which you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen, that image there. They can transport small items over short distances with no people on board and are operated autonomously, or currently more likely to be piloted remotely. So these types of vehicles operate at a peak altitude of approximately 120 to 150 meters above ground. This is the equivalent of a 10 to 13-story building. So why is urban air mobility needed? Well, 56% of the global population lives in urban areas, and this is expected to rise to 68% by 2050. Peak hour traffic congestion costs approximately 100 billion a year, and as we're all aware, space constraints in cities are a challenge for expanding ground infrastructure. As well as transportation as a whole must reduce carbon dependency and more effectively use infrastructure. More specifically, in relation to logistics, people want their deliveries faster, and companies are looking to streamline their resources. So this technology opens up new opportunities to facilitate that. As you can see here, these charts have been taken from the 2023 McKinsey study. You can see here that there's a significant growth in commercial drone deliveries, and this is expected to exceed 1 million by the year 2023. In terms of the use cases, in general, the majority are healthcare, but actually the restaurants and grocery use case is also growing. And in terms of the locations and regions where these commercial drone deliveries are operating, the majority are operating in Asia, Pacific, and Africa, and also in Europe and North America, slightly less significantly, but that is expected to grow. And here I have some case study examples. So in the top right of your screen, you can see a zipline drone. So zipline have been around since 2014 and are based in Silicon Valley. They started operations in Africa delivering medical supplies, and they've rapidly expanded to the US market, where they deliver medical and grocery supplies to customers. In the top left-hand side of the screen, you can see the UPS Flight Forward drone. They deliver pharmaceutical goods in the US and supported deliveries of vaccines during the pandemic. In the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you can see DHL Express drone, which partnered with the Chinese drone company Ehang in 2019 to provide deliveries along a specified 8-kilometer route from the DHL service center in the suburbs of the city in Guangzhou inner city. And they're able to carry up to 5-kilogram payload, and it's been reported that they've reduced delivery times by up to 40 minutes and saved costs by up to 80% per delivery. And lastly, in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, this is an example from Manna, which is an Irish startup founded in 2019. They deliver groceries to a small community in Ireland, and customers can use their app to track their drone delivery. Manna has plans to expand in other European countries, and they've so far received some very good feedback from customers. So that's all from me for now. Very welcome to take any questions during this discussion. You can also email me. My email address is on the screen now. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Lucy, for bringing in this aerial perspective. I mean, there are some use cases where it seems to work more than in others, but in any case, with the booming sort of e-commerce and delivery market, it looks like there's space to be found everywhere, including in the sky. So, yeah, happy to have that perspective on board, and you can definitely bring it into the discussion. Thanks, Lucy. So, last but not least, we are joined by Iskandar Tanger. He is the CEO and founder of Coding the Curbs, and he'll be telling us about the way digitalization will also be a part of innovation in city logistics. So, Iskandar, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Jean-Paul, for this introduction. Almost don't have to tell the story anymore, but I'm Iskander, one of the founders of Coding the Curbs, and today I am talking a bit about curbside management, since we're a startup from Amsterdam in curbside management, and I also want to talk a bit about the influence that logistics have on the public space and how we designed our city. It's been mentioned in the beginning already that sometimes we forget a bit about logistics, and that's also something I've noticed working with a lot of cities, that old cities have been designed around logistics, like Amsterdam with the canals, but now we forget a bit about that logistics plays such an important role. If we take a look at how, for example, a square could look in the summertime, logistics in the future can have a different role in this. We see the drones of Lucy, we see your drones here as well, but we see that people are out there and there's a different usage of space, also with regards to logistics in summertime, than compared to, for example, wintertime, when there's a peak moment in deliveries and people take the car more often. We need less space for public, but we need more space for delivery of, for example, logistics. And that's how I envision also the future city. I truly believe that a future city should be adaptive, where the function of the public space can change throughout the day or even throughout the week. So, for example, in the morning, you will use the same space for parking of vehicles. In the afternoon, you can use the space, for example, for a shared mobility hub. And in the weekends, when it's sunny, you can use the same space for terraces, like in this image. So we're going from a monofunctional usage of space to a more multifunctional use of space. And of course, logistics is an important part of this equation. And that's why we also looked with our startup a little bit closer at logistics, because with an increase of almost 40% of logistics, this is the most important challenge that we're dealing with for cities. So we like to digitize the public space with our startup, and we call that smart zones. And we offer users a software platform and a hardware platform to reserve this space. So, for example, this gentleman can use our software platform to book a time slot to safely deliver goods, and he can use this space to park his van. And how that in the basis works is that we have a user-friendly booking platform. You don't need to download anything. It opens directly in the browser, but also on the street, since it's something new, a bookable public space, we need to communicate this. And we communicate this with an on-street sign. It's an e-ink sign that shows what the function is of the zone, the smart zone, for example, for unloading. And it also shows who has the right to park there by a license plate, for example. Then at the location, we always like to make it stand out compared to other public spaces. So that's why we give it a sort of lining, and people know that this is something new. And we also measure the usage of the space. And in the backend, we integrate with things like enforcement companies or permit systems. So we make sure that people behave in the right way. And what are we heading towards in the future? We also believe that where the old city walls used to be will be changed towards a more digital city wall. A zero emission zone is an example of that. And a city will start controlling who is allowed to access that digital wall under what conditions. So, for example, is it zero emission? What's the weight of a vehicle and what's the size? But also the route towards the end location will be controlled in the future by cities. So they will guide vehicles through socially desired routes, for example. So around school zones, but more on the bigger roads towards the end point. And in the future, I also believe that these end locations, they can have multiple functions. So if they're not used by logistics, you can also use them for other functions, like we did, for example, in Utrecht. We created a sort of mini festival with live music and herbs and seating for the neighborhood. But of course, since Santa is coming to town, we can also use the same space for Christmas markets, for example. So thank you very much for your attention, and over back to you, Jean-Paul.
Okay, so you're bringing in something that is related to flexible public space that can adapt throughout the year depending on the seasons, and so it's not like a city would have to take some kind of a decision and the space is blocked. I mean, you're bringing in this notion that things can change throughout the seasons. That's an interesting one. So thanks for that. Yeah, well, let's go straight into the panel because I think we have a lot of things to discuss. I think we've seen very different perspectives on innovation in city logistics, and clearly we have to discuss this interaction between public space on the one hand and the management of public space, and then how do logistics companies operate in the best possible manner. So we're going to need to try and discuss this point of interaction. Before we go there, I would like to understand, however, the way the business model of logistics in itself is evolving. And what kind of demands are users requesting you to perform, to deliver? Because I think that is also important to then inform our discussion on the interaction then with public space. EIT Urban Mobility actually did a poll on LinkedIn asking people, do they actively choose eco-friendly delivery options when ordering online? And we see that actually, let's say that it doesn't seem to be, on the highest agenda. So 33% say occasionally, 31% say rarely, only 26% say yes always, and 10% even say, well, we never order online. So sustainability may be a driver, but it doesn't come out very strongly here in the poll results. I'd like to turn to you first, Christian, because you insisted very much on this, sustainability ambition that you have at PostNord. Is this coming from users, from the end market, or are there other drivers that are also pushing you to innovate within your business model?
As I see it, there are the first big part in there is the global companies that definitely have seen the agenda coming on the sustainability. So big customers on e-commerce, and I would say that is mainly within construction and clothing industry that are pushing these demands, and a lot of the reason for it is to actually win contracts. So this is the main thing that is causing. And these companies also pushing for getting more and more accurate data and item level data on everything that goes through our processes. So they really want to have accurate data. They want to have more of it. They want to have access to it, and then want to have transparency. And then, of course, we see when it comes to the brand and what people they choose. I agree that I don't think it's the main concern for many people in Denmark, and I know there is a huge difference within the Scandinavian countries about how much are you actually willing to give extra to pay for when it comes to sustainability. And Denmark is not in the high part. So the amount of people who's willing to pay extra for having a sustainability delivery is not very high. But when that is said, I also want to say that my feeling of this is that every time we talk about sustainability, people they always talk about how much extra money it costs. And when I looked into electrifying the fleet, and that comes both with the vans and also with the trucks. If you follow down and you make your business calculation right on this, it's actually cheaper to make the right choice. But then at the same time, you have a fleet that you actually need to cut off in your fleet strategy. So you need to combine these things together, because it's not very wise either to throw out a 3-year-old diesel vehicle just because you want to electrify it. That's not very good for a sustainability agenda. But it's not more expensive to go and make the right choice. That's my belief.
And maybe Lucy also to chip in, because I mean you were bringing in the urban air mobility. Is this coming from a sustainability angle, or are there other drivers that are explaining why companies are also looking at these kinds of delivery options?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a key driver for the use of urban air mobility type aircraft. I would say the biggest benefit for the use of drones is that they can deliver faster and more reliable delivery times than conventional vehicles, particularly in inner cities where you have congestion and issues around parking, etc. So I think in terms of drones, the most viable use case, as you saw on my chart, was at least initially for the healthcare deliveries, because they're usually very time-bound, urgent, and people don't mind paying a bit more for those types of deliveries. But more increasingly, we're seeing them now for groceries and food deliveries. So I think people just in general, as customers, we want our deliveries faster. That's increasingly so. So I think that's really the driver for the use of drones. They are, from a sustainability point of view, they are zero emission. And not as noisy, I would say, as some types of vehicles at close range. So there's those considerations as well, but I wouldn't say that that's the key driver for the use of drones over other types of sustainable mobility for logistics.
Yeah, I mean, speed clearly is a driver, a little bit like people wanting to go as quickly as possible from one end to the city of another. I mean, no one likes to be stuck somewhere. But Christian, you wanted to chip in very quickly.
Yeah, it's just this thing about, I agree that people, they want to have it faster, but they also want to have the flexibility. They want to order it to when it suits them. And I think that in the future we will see more academics in the cities, and academics, they might want to have a more flexible working life, where maybe one day working from home and next day having the delivery later because they have been in the office and take a long day at the office. So these normal slots that you have seen in the past, I think they will definitely increase, and that the people that will expect this also, if you have ordered something for pickup, that you can just switch and say, could you bring it between 10 and 11 tonight, because that's when I'm home.
Yeah, so the speed and the flexibility are important drivers. Payal, I mean, this is in the context of a booming sector. I mean, I don't have the figures, but I would imagine that they're pretty exponential over the last few years, and the growth will continue. Do you have also then requests coming from users, asking cities to make special plans, asking you to make special plans to facilitate logistics in the cities? Is that a request that you feel coming as well?
So for the users, for us, could be two different groups of people. It could be the citizens who are literally using or getting the deliveries, or it could be the delivery companies who are kind of using the city infrastructure. So they are kind of users for us as well. um, we don't receive too many requests from citizens on per se, at least for the deliveries point of view, because for them it is just the delivery companies, and I don't know if they know that the city council plays a role into that. But we have heard a lot from, for example, the delivery companies, that the space that they get for the deliveries in the city is quite limited. So the loading areas or the unloading areas that are there in the city are quite limited, and it becomes very difficult for them to enter the city during certain times. For example, if the streets are pedestrianized, they cannot enter after 11, so they have to make their deliveries before 11. The loading bays, there isn't any kind of digital data set for it, so they don't, well, the drivers have it in their mind, but they don't have any kind of information. So we are working on that as well. And then the space in general as well. So we have received quite a few requests on how do we manage all the conflicting demands there.
And that brings me then back to Iskandar as well, because I mean, as I understand it, your tool sort of optimizes space, or creates space where people don't think there is space, something like that. But what are the requests then coming from the logistics sector on your tool? What specific sort of demands are you trying to meet with your tool for the logistics sector, and how would you see the logistics sector is, developing according to a certain number of key performance indicators? Like, what are those for you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. There's multiple questions in one. Let's put out first that I think the current situation is cities are like a Wild West. So when you're driving a truck, you just drive into the city and you can park it wherever you feel fit. and you unload your goods. And I think that 40% of all the logistic deliveries, they will be happening with a violation. So that's a dangerous situation, it's a nuisance for the neighborhood, and that's something we need to deal with. So what I offer logistics is I offer them a space guarantee. So they're able to make a reservation up front, and they have the space dedicated to them at that certain moment. So that's the benefit we offer them. But I just want to make something clear that we have all kinds of logistics as clients, and we're now talking a lot about parcels, right? But parcels is only a small portion of the logistics that go into a city every day. It's around 4 or 5%. There's many other logistics that are important as well, like horeca or retail, and they often need a longer period to park the van and to unload goods. So specifically for them, we offer a good solution because we offer them a place where they can safely park and don't need to drive around looking for a parking spot, because that causes a lot of issues as well when it comes to sustainability and nuisance.
So indeed, so by allowing them to find the right place, you're also helping them on this idea of speed to delivery, right? I mean, at the end of this does seem to be the baseline to which all these companies are working against. If I turn back to Christian, because you were talking also about the fleet management issue, can you say something about what are the factors that are influencing actually the choice of mobility option that you will be using for whatever delivery? I mean, are cities sort of regulating that, so you have to adapt to all sorts of different local contexts? Or is it more of a business-driven decision to say, we need to have this kind of fleet here, and we need to adapt here with this kind of fleet? How does that work? How does the choice work?
I think there are two different ways in this. The problem in most of the cities is that it's a political system and there's a mayor, and that can sometimes give some issues. We started a dialogue with the biggest cities in Denmark, and it's most active with the city of Aarhus and city of Copenhagen, which is the two biggest cities. And when I look into this and also talk to city logistics in Brussels, there are some issues here because not all want to go the same way. So you end up in this discussion about that, depending on what is the local political agenda, what is the right way to go. So there needs to be somebody trying to structure this maybe at a higher level, both a national level but also EU level. This is my view, but it's very, very the thing that was said about that having these spaces and that you can have a slot in this. I totally agree with them. I also think that these places, they should be very close to where you can do your shopping in these areas. And these areas might even be combined to having some smaller hubs, pickup points where you can have more things joined. There was mentioned this thing that when you have to go pick up something or you have a van coming to your house, then you have 3 different vans. It would be nice to have some points where you can actually concentrate logistics in the cities. But the problem with cities is that the expense of the ground where you want to have your shop or your hub and this. And what I've seen in Copenhagen in the past, we were actually in the middle of Copenhagen, almost the best place we had in Copenhagen. It was also very, very expensive square meters to have a logistics business. So we moved outside the city. And when I look around Copenhagen, all city logistics, not only from us, but also from all our competitors, none of them are in the city center. They're all delivering from out around. And that means a lot of vehicles going in through morning traffic and going out with the afternoon traffic. Things that could be solved with a more intelligent slot time, like was just mentioned before, where you actually have a place in some of these places where you can unload and when you can bring it to other things. And then you said, what is important? For me, the most important thing, that's basically the drop time and the time you spend in traffic. Because sitting in a queue, that costs money. It costs money for the vehicle. It costs money for the payroll. So the more efficient you can be of this, and I see a movement in big cities on cargo bikes, city bikes, many different types, with trailers, with bigger loads, because what they actually can do that a normal vehicle can't is that they can maneuver around it, and that gives that you have less time in traffic and you get better drop time because it's quick to get off and it's quick to get on. The problem with them is that you need to have some place in the city where you can actually upload this, because you can only have maybe packages for 2 hours to deliver. So it brings you into the difficulty if you have to go 15 kilometers to load the bike again, then you will lose the time on another place. So these city logistics hubs, delivery places where you can drop off, whether it's a supermarket or it's something people they have ordered in e-commerce, doesn't really matter. So basically, I think we all agree with them. But to make this happen, you need to join as partner, whether you're competitors or not. And this is what we're trying to engage with the municipalities.
So that's an interesting point, and I'll just ask Lucy this. I mean, let me know, But my question is it actually tenable to imagine that with this big boom of e-commerce, is it actually tenable to continue with the promise that we can do, household delivery? I mean, is that even a tenable promise, or should we actually already start really thinking about these hubs, because it's actually just not feasible to reach all these households all the time, non-stop, in a more and more permanent way, in addition to everything else that needs to happen in the city. What would you say, Lucy?
Well, personally, I'd be more inclined to go down the hub route, particularly in inner cities, because as Christian mentioned as well, people want flexibility, and that can change moment to moment. If someone gets called into the office or an appointment, they might not be at home to pick up that delivery. And so if there's a centralized hub where they can go to and collect it within their own time, then that not only helps the customer in terms of the flexibility to collect their parcels, but it also, I would say, would help the logistics providers in the certainty that they can drop off the parcels at that specific location. And I think that would be best all round, really. Also from a city planning perspective, if there's facilities for that drop off around those hubs, and perhaps if that's coding the curb or other digital tools, which I think we might be discussing later on, to enable the unloading and loading of goods at those hubs, then that could be a good solution, I think, in the future. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, so Payal, where do you position yourself here? I mean, because it does seem that that will require a certain amount of collaboration between competitors as well, and then cities being kind of brokers there. I mean, that might not necessarily be such a comfortable position for you.
That is well, when we say hubs, I think there are two things that could really encompass there, because there are like parcel lockers, which could be like the pickup locations, but there are like a micro consolidation hub as well, where the transition take place from, for example, an e-vehicle or a diesel vehicle to a cargo bike. So the whole idea of the micro consolidation hub is that there will be a truck coming in within the urban periphery like once a day, and they'll park the truck in a particular location, and from there there will be like cargo bikes or e-bikes or trikes going out from there. Now, as was mentioned already, that it wouldn't work if it is like 15 kilometers away, because there's like a small number of packages that come in the cargo bikes. So we want them to be in the central location, which could be used by the delivery companies to move around, go back and forth from that hub, and it becomes easier for them. So what at least Dublin City Council did was that in 2018 we released like an eco hub bylaw, under which any delivery company could apply for an eco hub license. And when I say eco hub, it is a micro consolidation center or a micro consolidation hub basically. And as a part of that, they could apply for a license to operate a eco hub in the city center area, and they can make the deliveries in the nearby areas accordingly. A company, the UPS, actually is already operating an eco hub within Dublin city centre. So there are like 2 destinations that they have, and we are also talking with other delivery companies who would be interested in using that model. Now, we again do understand that the public spaces are kind of there is a constraint there on the use of public spaces. So what we have started looking into is now to look into other private spaces as well. So it could be, for example, the car parks, or it could be, for example, the warehouses, the empty warehouses, or even the bus shelters, and so on. So there's a conversation going on, I think, in the current situation with the ambitious targets that we have for the city and even for the companies. As Christian mentioned, there are targets for the post nord. I think there are certain targets for the delivery companies in Ireland as well, so they would have to comply with that. So I think that's where the push is coming from. And since we already have like a working model from a delivery company, we know it works. So the business model is feasible. It just needs a bit of an initial investment, and probably it would kind of feed off because it takes out a certain number of vehicles from the road, cut down the emissions, cut down the cost of fuel as well, and then so on. So the business model there would certainly work, and I think the hub model actually could work, but it would require a bit of an intervention from the local authorities, and it could be in the form of, for example, the bylaws, for example, the Eco Hub bylaw, or even um, the certain facilities, for example, the charging of the e-cargo bike. Where do people park their cargo bikes? I think that kind of facilities or infrastructure to be in place if we are introducing digital means to manage something. How do we enforce it? Because without enforcement, I think the digital tools might not work, and I think that's where the city council really plays a big role.
Yeah, and then it also comes down to, you know, the decision on the space itself. So where are these micro hubs located, and what other services might be built around them so that they become really part of the public space, I suppose. Iskander, I mean, you touched a little bit upon that. How would your tool maybe help shape decisions then on the local level, and how do you overcome this sort of collective decision that's also required from the operators then using these micro hubs? Because I see that there are these two things. You need to find the public space, but then you need to have competitors working together around the same micro hub, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, exactly, and that's also a bit of a tension field, so to say. But what we normally do is we look at, okay, what are existing spots, and where is there an opportunity area? So if you look at an average city street, you see that most people take a car during the day to go to work. But there will be more deliveries during the day at the same street. So you can use or reuse the parking spots to use them as delivery points or local micro hubs. And that's an approach that we're doing. So always when we're looking at a city, we're taking stock of what is the delivery profile of certain streets. And together with the logistical companies, we look at, okay, what are good locations potentially for you to create this new unloading base, this bookable unloading base. And that's one of the first steps we need to do, together with the stakeholders, with the delivery companies, sit down and look at a map and say, okay, you tell us, where do you need to deliver? And often when you look at HoReCa goods, you see that they are closely located to restaurants, cafes, and bars. But when you look at an office area, they have a different sort of DNA, and they need to have the locations at different spots. So that's how we approach it normally. So it's an opportunity for the logistic companies, but we also need the collaboration from the local authorities to really enforce it. They need to say, we don't want vehicles in the middle of the street anymore, parking and unloading there. They have to do that, and they have to enforce it. Otherwise, the logistic companies won't start using a bookable loading bay. That's one of the mandatory things you need to get in place.
Yeah, I mean, parking on double lanes and all that is clearly one of our little nightmares, as we go around our cities, for sure. The Wild West, as you said. So as we're talking about public space, and we've talked about urban air mobility, but I have a question from the audience that actually takes us underground. The question is, there are 4 startups providing last mile distribution by pods moved in tubes underground. What is your opinion on these innovations? So we've talked about the air. Do you think that there's potential also to optimize the underground part? Maybe, I don't know, Christian and Payal. Maybe Christian for, okay, Iskandar first. Go for it.
Yeah, I think the underground is not so empty as we often think, right? If you look at old cities, especially here in the Netherlands, for example, the underground is quite filled already with all the cables and now getting EVs in place, charging poles, sewer. And then we also want space for trees, and they also need a lot of space underneath the ground. But it might work, I think, for new cities. So you might have heard of the Line, of Neom in Saudi Arabia, those kind of cities. When you build from the ground up, then you can think about delivery underneath the ground. Yeah, I think.
Okay. Anyone else want to chip in on that one?
I can give
Please.
a hint on that. I'm open to basically everything, and I think it's quite interesting to follow any new invention that comes and follow it curiously, because sometimes the most crazy ideas can actually be the one building. One thing I sometimes when I talk to especially the politicians about when we talk about e-commerce and how much is actually brought around in the cities, they quite frequently they think it's something like, around Copenhagen we'll probably make a few places where we can station a few cargo bikes, and they don't. I don't think most people actually know how much volumes there are actually delivered, and what we use as consumers, because it's huge. So when you talk about, for example, these city hubs or other solutions that we're not even there yet, it's not just a small hub on 10 square meters someplace in a corner. If you want to do this, and you need many of them to actually solve the city's need for the future, and with a growing e-commerce market that might be 2.5 times bigger in the coming years, it will challenge, and nobody thinks about. Everybody looks as today and not tomorrow. And I think the wise thing is that all of us, we need to look and follow what is going on around the world. We need to learn from it, and then we need to adjust to find the right way for future cities to actually manage within this. So I'm totally open if it's possible.
Okay. Payal first, and then we go back to Iskander.
Um, I would say first that it is a very interesting idea, and I have studied a bit about it, but I'm not very sure how it could be implemented in the streets. As Iskander mentioned, the streets in Dublin or Amsterdam and so on, they are such an old city. Even creating a new public space is difficult. There is, for example, the active travel or the segregated cycle lanes that are being put on in Dublin. And as simple as it may seem, that okay, it's just a segregated cycle lane, you just have to put a bit of an infrastructure, but even digging that bit of a surface requires a lot of kind of in preparation for us, because as Iskender mentioned again, that there are a lot of wires in the pipelines and so on that could be really dangerous. So even digging that much of a hole requires a lot of permissions and the safety guidelines and so on. So probably it could come in like way ahead in future, because well, metro lines are there, so why not the ducts for the parcels? But it might take a significant amount of investment from the city and from the delivery companies. And since we are talking about the business model, I think we might have to sit down and think that, oh, how would it work? Who would pay for it? How would the construction work? What would the infrastructure look like? What is the requirement from the city? What is the requirement from the delivery companies? How would the regulations take place and so on? So there is a lot to think about, but probably at in I don't see like in next 5 to 10 years it would happening in the busier cities at least. But for example, if there is a new uh, city or even a new apartment complex, for example, where there are grocery stores, there are departmental stores, there are apartments, and there are bigger companies and so on, if that is being built up, probably it could work in that small area. But in an urban area where everything is already well established, where the streets are already narrow, I'm not very sure how would it really work.
Okay, so we have Lucy wants to chip in, and then we'll go to Iskander very quickly and Christian. Okay, so Lucy first.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow on from Payal because I totally agree with what you just said, Payal. Yeah, I'm thinking like how would it work in terms of the infrastructure below ground? And I think Iskander, you mentioned that if it was a city which is just being built, then yes, there's a fewer challenges, I'd say. But yeah, when you're talking about the ground, there's also land ownership comes into play as well. So there's quite a lot of logistic issues to overcome with that one. Not to say that it's not possible, because it is, but there's quite a lot of challenges with that. And I would just say, like, I'm taking more of the cautious stance here. When we're talking about innovation, I think we need to be a little bit careful and cautious, and understand, okay, so everyone likes these new shiny technologies, but we need to think, okay, what will this actually solve? And this is more innovation in general. So what are the challenges, and what does this new technology try and achieve? And then what's the cost benefit for implementation of this technology, and what could work in one area might not work at all in another. So it's thinking very carefully about how that new technology and innovation will improve our society, improve the environment, meet all of the or at least some of the challenges that we face within our cities. I think we need to be cautious and carefully think about these things.
Yep. Yeah, indeed. And we'll get back to that just now. So Iskander, very quickly, and then Christian also very quickly.
Yeah, I just wanted to, and it also touched upon Lucie's point just now. But Christian, you triggered me while saying that people are not aware of how big these hubs need to be, just for logistics, just for parcels in the inner city. And I think that's one of the main challenges. People are not aware. Customers are not aware. So also clients like office buildings, they are not aware of the impact they have by ordering something. If I order something tonight, I expect it here to be tomorrow, right? At my doorstep. And I don't want to pay for it. Because if I have to pay for it, then I'll go to another online shop and I order it there. And that's actually the real problem. It's a bit like, ordering goods at home is a bit like the new smoking, right? We all know it's bad, but we still do it, right? And we're so addicted to it. And that's where we need to change. And I'm curious what the role is of government in this, and what the role is of authorities in educating people that ordering stuff without using sustainable modes of transport or without using a hub, that's very bad for the world.
Okay, Christian, a quick reaction.
Yeah, it's actually just following up this point because I was provoked just before, because I think some of the issues here is that when people, they buy something, they always look on the thing they're buying, what they will end up having in their hand. So who will pay for better packaging to make this recycled packaging? And nobody definitely wants to pay for transport when it comes to that. And I think this is one of the biggest issues. Everybody wants me to drive in electric vehicles, but to install the infrastructure and to do all the right things, who's going to do that? And when it comes to the municipalities, actually to build these hubs and do the right things for the city, which I think could benefit all of us. When it comes to investments, who is going to pay it? Because nobody wants to pay for transport, and that is actually the funny, questions in many of these things.
So convenience has a cost. And innovation is not just about the new shiny technology. I mean, it has to serve some kind of purpose. It has to solve some kind of problem. And at the end of the day, it's not just about the users getting things on time. It's also about the way that logistics are interacting with public space. And cities themselves also have objectives, and those objectives are also going to have an influence on the way logistics will or will not be able to perform their daily business. So we see that, more and more cities will be setting targets and rules on, whether it's vehicle access restrictions or carbon emissions or congestion charges, and all of this. At the end of the day, the aim is to actually limit the movement of vehicles in city areas, in city centres. And so how is that interaction happening? I mean, is the logistics sector, would you say, is it a partner for cities to deliver on their objectives? Or is there a bit of pushback, actually, and it's a bit of a conflictual dialogue sometimes where cities will be considering logistics companies as, problems for them to achieve their objectives? Maybe Payal first on that one.
What I've seen personally is, because we talk to a lot of delivery companies for the solution that we are trying to implement, it is important for us to talk to the consumers or the delivery companies themselves. And they have been quite collaborative, because they, as Christian has already mentioned, PostNord have its own ambitions of cutting the carbon emissions by 50%. So every company actually have their own ambitions of cutting the carbon emissions, being more sustainable, and so does the city. City also have its own ambitions or the objectives to reach that sustainability kind of index. For example, Ireland have like an aim to cut down its emission by 50% by 2030. And for that, I think everyone has to come together. So city council cannot do everything on its own. The delivery companies cannot do things on their own, or any kind of, and when we talk logistics, it's not just the delivery companies, there are servicing industry as well, so the grocery stores and so on, and they have their own sustainability goals and they cannot really work on their own. So it is important for us to get together at some point and start working towards that common goal that we all have. I think at this point there is a kind of a segregation between different kind of organizations that exist. I wouldn't say it a pushback, it's just a different company culture and different organizational structure that they have, different kind of security or the privacy issues, or different kind of operations basically. So, but I do think, and I personally hope that in future these different organizations could really work together to build like a good, sustainable, and smarter future for any city.
Okay, and Lucy, I mean, you're working on these issues. Do you see a sort of a collaborative approach, or is it a little bit sort of, the public authority against the logistics companies, and it's difficult to build these governance models actually?
Uh, no, I mean, I think that there's definitely opportunities for these like public-private partnerships and ongoing conversations between the public sector and private sector, because as Payal mentioned, it's with everyone's own interest to align with the goals of cities in terms of the sustainability goals, also the challenges around space, and trying to keep residents as happy as possible. That all comes into play, I think, from both parties. And I've, as a consultant, a lot of the work I do is trying to bring stakeholders together to have these open discussions as much as it's possible. I know there's confidential information comes into play as well, but in general, I think that there's only benefit really that can be had by having these discussions between the various different parties. And I think even just discussions like this today are beneficial to try and come up with solutions to the challenges that we face within cities, specifically in relation to logistics.
Okay, and Iskandar, I mean, you were saying that you felt that cities hadn't really given the attention that they should to logistics. Do you feel that they are now more so? But do you think they are driven by finding the right governance system for logistics, or rather trying to block certain types of transport modes in logistics, or certain types of practices in logistics? What kind of environment do you feel that we're operating in?
Yeah, it's the environment has two phases, and I think that's for a city official always very difficult, right? The city official always has two kinds of hats, and the one is the strict one, with the stick, putting out new laws and rules, like the zero emission zone in the Netherlands. 27 cities will have a zero emission zone from 25, which is quite soon already. So that's really a rigid rule and a rigid enforcement. But on the other hand, a city official also has the hat to stimulate new kind of behavior, to help with the development of mobility hubs, of logistic hubs, to help with the development of new solutions. And I think that's there is some friction in this, because some of these strict rules, like the zero emission zone, especially in the Netherlands, they have caused some protests. You can imagine if you have a company and you sell at the market, and you need to travel once a week to that inner city, and you need to now buy a very expensive electrical vehicle, which will not be possible. then we have to work on transition rules, right, and exemptions for these kind of businesses. But I noticed there's a lot of friction in currently happening here in the Netherlands, but I think that's good. We're talking about it, and we're finding new solutions and bringing logistics also forward as one of the solutions towards a more sustainable future, I guess.
Okay, and Christian, yeah, I'd be very keen to hear your views on this as well.
Yeah, like I said before, when I started, I think that most cities, they are run by a political agenda, and that means votes. This is the main focus for a lot of the people running the cities. I think this EU project with the 100 cities trying to reduce their CO2 to around zero in 2030 is a very good project, where you can actually combine different EU projects across these 100. I actually think it's around 113 cities right now. You need to have this, but you also somehow needs, country-wise and EU-wise, to steer up in a direction which is the right direction. Because the problem is, I have a lot of cities and mayors in Denmark that have demands for their customers delivering into theirs. It can be hospitals, it can be the municipality, etc. Children taking care of schools. And if they come with demands that are, in all directions, how will I steer that up as a national company? That is very complex. So somehow there needs to be. It's okay to do some wild thing in a test, but some way there should also be a direction. And I don't always feel that there is a direction in these creative ideas that comes with the political agenda.
And that's within a single city, but then as a logistics company, I suppose you have to deal with this going on in every city that you're serving, delivering parcels into, and keeping track of decisions on a local level can't be such an easy thing. Do digital tools help there, actually, to just track, changes in governance? And is the data even there to be able to supply information to the digital tools? I don't know. Is there anything out there that can help logistics innovation to respond to governance changes in cities? I don't know. Maybe Iskandar or Payal. Yeah, please.
Um, That's actually a very good question. I have too many thoughts in my mind that how many digital tools could be there to help this out. There could be many. The answer is very simple. But I think within a public authority or within a city, it is very difficult to adopt any kind of digital tool, because on our side, it requires a lot of governance and a lot of checking and a lot of, I don't know if you know about it, but we even have like a DPIA to do, which is like a very big document every time we want to do anything relation to digital that could remotely touch the privacy of the people themselves. But it's not very easy to build in a digital tool within the operational side of the city, because it requires a lot of changes in bylaws and changes in regulations, because with every digital tool there could also be a related enforcement into it. But having said that, I think the cities are now becoming more and more aware of using those kind of digital tools, so be it AI, or be it some kind of an application, or be it some kind of a data structure and so on. So I think the cities have started looking into it. If I take the example of the Dublin City Council, for example, we realize with the competitive demand that the curbside space have, we have started looking into that, what kind of assets do we have, because we realize that if we want to manage something, we should know what we're really trying to manage. So that's where we came up with the curbside management kind of tool. We are piloting the solution as of now, so we won't say that we would have like a ready to deploy solution at one point. But I think that's where we are starting, and I think that's where the smart cities team in each of the local authorities really come into picture, because that's where we come like testing different kind of digital tools that are there. But as Iskender is already there, he is kind of an example of how the digital tools could help really manage the different challenges that any city might have.
Yeah, there is an element of this real time information to supply to logistic companies so that everything is up to date. And there's not just the question of the tool, but then it's also a question of getting access to the information, right? So that might be tricky. Let's turn to the future. So we had our poll for the audience, and I would like to essentially let's just have a look at the results of the poll, asking the question, in the next 5 years, what will be the most disruptive trend to the future of city logistics? And actually, what's coming out as number one are autonomous logistics, which is actually interesting because it's something that we haven't really touched upon in this discussion. Regulatory requirements on the urban environment come second, with digitalization of logistics. Booming e-commerce and increasing urbanization are the last. So I would like to ask each of you this same question. I would like you to pick one of these answers, or maybe another answer that's not on the list, but only one, just so that we get a sense of, according to you, what is that trend that will be disrupting logistics in the next 5 years. Over to you, Lucy, first.
Sure. So I actually agree with the poll. I personally think autonomous logistics is going to boom over the next few years. As you saw in my presentation, just specifically looking at commercial delivery drones, there's been a huge increase in growth from just within the past 5 years, and those are a form of autonomous logistics. But we're also seeing within cities, like I'm actually based in California, and the other day I was in San Francisco and I saw this autonomous robot doing deliveries on the street. And it's at first it's a novelty, but actually maybe in a few years' time that would just be a common occurrence. And I think this is driven by what we've discussed earlier, the speed of deliveries that people want. More and more people are living in cities, or at least they will be over the next few decades, as I presented earlier in my presentation. So we need to be thinking of new innovations, and autonomous logistics is one of those. I think that we're going to see a huge growth of.
Okay, thank you. Iskandar, what is your trend that you're
Yeah, so
thinking?
now I'm not allowed to go for autonomous anymore, which will be a big trend, of course. But let's start. I think that the biggest transitions will happen in cities. We're talking about city logistics, also with the growing populism, with growing skepticism around sustainability. I like to say that cities are still taking the lead. So cities are really focused on getting their sustainability goals in place. That's something I've noticed. And I think that circularity will be, in general, a big driver the upcoming years and decennium, because it will change the way that we behave and the way that we will look at ordering something or look at logistics. And I think it's from A to Z in the logistics chain, it will change. So before even ordering something, we will ask the question, do we really need it? Or can't we order it from something nearby? And when we order it, okay, how is it transported here, and what kind of packaging does it use? So I think that will trickle down to a lot of innovations on this chain. And I also think that the end, do I need it now or do I need it later? And will I let it be delivered at my doorstep, or will I pick it up by active mobility? And I think the whole notion and the idea of circularity, that will be the biggest influence of innovations in the future.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. What about Christian? What would be your view?
I definitely think that growth in e-commerce will change, and we have seen that for many years with a heavy growth, and especially over Corona, where people they kind of, we've also got the older population in getting used to work on or shop on e-commerce. But I think there will be some changes in the way that we see logistics in the e-commerce, which I hope. And one of them is what you see is the growth of warehouses and really big warehouses. There might be solutions in the future where you can actually say, where do we have this? If you're buying a phone, or you're buying some medicine, or whatever you're basically buying, where is it closest in a warehouse? And then maybe there can be a joint AI between companies, so you actually pick it from the closest place instead of traveling long distances for what you want to deliver, because that could bring down a lot of the transport and efficiency in this. So I think this will be one of the points. And then one of the things that I will mention is that what we have tried to work with in Denmark is we call it the closed box in Danish. So I will not go into the Danish word, but it's basically a parcel locker that is a bit smaller than the ordinary, but they should be very close to where you live and more around. And I think the conveniency, what I see, especially what I have seen after Corona, is that more and more people, they actually go for the conveniency, because I think most of us, if you're at work all day, then it's bloody irritating. You come home and then you have some information either by email or SMS that you need to go and pick up this parcel, so you might as well plan it straight ahead. And I think conveniency is where you want it to be, that there would be more pickup points, parcel lockers along the railway, metro, bus stations, shopping malls, so you can actually plan your day and say, where do I use the less time to pick up the product that I want?
Okay, so booming e-commerce would be your trend, and how to deal with that, and the development of these big warehouses that might even replace supermarkets. I don't know, who knows, or this kind of big retail. Payal, what would be your big next trend then?
Yeah, I just have to choose one, is it?
Only
I wish
one.
I could choose multiple because autonomous vehicles do seem like a very lucrative one, but I won't choose it because we're talking about next 5 years. I would go with the digitization of the logistics sector because that seems more plausible at this point. And when we say digitization in the logistics sector, it could be anything. It could be the digital twin of the city, where we put in the delivery or the logistic information. It could be a digital layer, the curbside layer, where you find all the regulations, um, all the road signs, and all those things in the digital format, because trust me, cities probably don't have it at this point. Or it could be the digital loading base, it could be the smart loading base. There, because these are the solutions that are being tested as of now around the world. In the King's Speech in UK and London, actually, they have made it they have introduced the regulation to digitize all their traffic order regulations. And I think that is to pave the way to the autonomous vehicles. So for that to happen, there is a background work that has to be done, which includes the digitization of a lot of things, of the mobility itself. And I think the last mile delivery or the delivery in the logistics sector plays like a big role in the mobility of any city. So probably that would happen first, and then the other things would just follow it.
Okay, brilliant. And that's in the hope that, that digitalization in general will not sort of completely replace some kind of a material relationship that we might still want to have with the world. I mean, on the other hand, I was speaking to someone yesterday about virtual worlds and how that's also developing a relationship with other kinds of areas that might change in very much like Iskandar saying, our relationship with materials, So I don't know where all this is going, but there's a lot of things that are, commuting through cities, whether it's ideas, people, logistics, vehicles. And there's a lot of work to be done on governance to ensure that innovation is, useful, both for citizens, but also then for cities as such. And then also for business. As you said, Payal, at the beginning, logistics are the lifeline of cities. And, a lot of actors and operators depend on those deliveries. Thank you so much to the four of you for having, really engaged in a great conversation and shared your views. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. Okay, so I would like now then to hand over for the conclusions to this event. I would like to bring on stage Wiebke Müller. She is the Innovation Lifecycle Officer at EIT Urban Mobility, and she's also leading on all issues related to sustainable city logistics. So Wiebke, over to you. What did you think of the discussion?
Thank you so much. Yes, super insightful to hear the inputs from the four panelists. Very interesting to hear the different pathways and approaches which are done in connection to decarbonizing the last mile, fighting urban congestion, specifically in connection to Santa coming to town, and of course outside of the Christmas season as well. And just to share from EIT of mobility perspective, we see knowledge sharing and best practice sharing key in achieving the decarbonization goals together, both on a city level, regional, national, and European scale. And as we can see today, the mobility talk is the perfect setting to discuss, share, and inspire at the same time. And in this context, I would like to highlight as well some different funding opportunities as well, very much connected to the topic of sustainable city logistics, since often, to be able to test the new innovations, funding is needed and quite a key tool as well. And the challenge area of sustainable city logistics is very much in the core of all activities we are doing at EIT or Mobility. It's very much core of the mobility system in a city, very often unfortunately forgotten when you talk about the bigger system here. And right now we have one call open. There's this SME market expansion call. And this is a mono-beneficiary type of call addressed to smaller and medium enterprises. And the wider goal of the call is to provide new pathways into wider cooperation within the mobility ecosystem, or in general to create new partnerships with lighter procedures and processes. And we could see there were some SMEs and startups attending as well. So if you feel addressed by this, it could be interesting for you to go on our website and look into our call for proposals, because here we are very much interested in funding new innovative approaches. Could be solutions, could be products, could be services, everything which has a positive impact on our mobility system and our cities in general. So I think our 4 amazing speakers already provided very interesting insights, maybe some thoughts to take home and think about it more. With this, I would like to thank very much all 4 of you too, Payal, Christian, Lucy, and Iskander, joining from all over the world, more or less. Thanks for taking the time and sharing your insights. Very much input, very great to listen in. And yes, in the context of the session title, Santa's coming to town, I think I wish everyone in the middle of December, you can already do this, a Merry Christmas and a good New Year. And then we're looking forward to the next mobility talk in January again. Thanks a lot for everyone.